I feel like 2023 is the year of farming sims. For so long, I felt like farming sims have just followed the exact same formula. But in the last 6 or so months, there have been some farming sims that have really shaken this up and really pushed this genre of game forward. And despite the fact that every game I'm going to talk about today is a farming sim, each and every one of them is so different and so unique, which really goes to show the true potential of the farming sim genre. And today we're going to be going through my absolute favorites that you can buy on the Nintendo Switch. But before we get into the list, let's do a few honourable mentions. First up is Stardew Valley. We all know it, we all love it, and I think it's the first game that comes to mind when you think about a farming sim. So I really thought there's no point including it in this list because most of you have probably already played it, and it might have been the reason that you love farming sims. Now, despite the fact that this is probably the game you could put the most amount of hours in on any farming sim in this entire list, this does come with a small disclaimer: it's not actually a very beginner-friendly farming sim. If you're anything like me, your first playthrough you will spend glued to the wiki to figure out what on earth you're meant to be doing. That's by no means a bad thing if you know what you're getting into, but I definitely have some more beginner-friendly farming sims on my list. The other honourable mention is going to My Time at Portia. I know a lot of people love this game, but I can't in good conscience recommend it when I know that in just a few months we're getting My Time at Sandrock, which is a definite improvement on the My Time franchise. But I am very excited to see how My Time at Sandrock plays on the Nintendo Switch, and hopefully it'll be a little bit less buggy than My Time at Portia. That's it for the honourable mentions, but before we get into the real list, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Puzzle Bobble Every Bubble. Now this is a Nintendo Switch exclusive game, so good news is if you like it, you can also purchase it physically as well as digitally. I don't know about you guys, but bubble shooting games used to be my absolute jam. And this seems to be like the old school ones I used to play and so much more. As this one now includes a new online multiplayer story mode where you can play with up to 3 other people, either in a 2v2 co-op battle mode or online co-op for 1 to 4 players. And it's up to you whether you play with friends only, with password protected matches, or you can go up against literally anyone with a ranked mode as well. This has a new mode which is Puzzle Bobble versus Space Invaders, and a bunch of new characters as well. The best thing about this is there's a demo out right now that lets you try the online mode for free so you can figure out if this is your kind of thing. And if you want to check it out right now, you can find the link in my description down below. Thank you again to Puzzle Bobble Every Bubble for sponsoring this video. Alright, the first game on my list is Littlewood. I know this is a cozy gaming classic, so today we're going to cover it as it's been a while since I last spoke about it. Now, unlike other games, this is actually set in a world that has already been saved. In fact, it was actually you who saved the world. But this game isn't about that story. It's about rebuilding the town after the calamity has already happened. But in order to upgrade the town, you will need resources that you need to go out and gather yourself by either farming, fishing, or foraging. This is just an incredibly chill farming sim with no pressure being put on you to carry out tasks. And the nice thing is, it's actually a farming sim with no combat in it whatsoever. You do get attacked, but it doesn't really do anything. It's also your job to decorate the town as well, and it's such a breeze to do on the Nintendo Switch. The other cool thing is, it's also up to you to convince people to come and move into the town that you're rebuilding. But in order to get them to actually move, you do have to complete a series of requirements that they ask you to do. I'm just such a fan of farming sims where the farming has a literal purpose and it isn't just to make you money. If you haven't already checked this out, it's incredibly chill. I think you'll love it. Then we have Wylde Flowers. Now, although this is definitely a farming sim, I'd actually class this as a narrative life sim with farming sim elements. And just like with Littlewood, the thing I love the most about this is that farming has a purpose other than just money. And this is a little different from a conventional farming sim because you don't make a character, you actually play as Tara. And at first, I wasn't really a big fan of this, but this soon turned out to be one of the biggest strengths of Wylde Flowers. Tara moves to Fairhaven after not only being dumped, but also losing her job. So she decides to come here to take care of her ill grandmother and help her out on her farm. However, after moving and settling in, you find out that your gran is actually a witch. And it turns out, so are you as well. The game takes you on an adventure as you join a coven and try and solve all the town's problems through magic, while also tending to your own farm. And a lot of the main quests themselves will see you foraging for ingredients or growing them on your farm in order to brew special potions or do certain spells. Now, one thing to bear in mind, because this is so story-based, this is a much slower-paced farming sim than what you're probably typically used to. But the voice acting is probably the main reason why I fell in love with the game. The fact that every character is voice acting brought them to life and made me care for them in a way I've never cared for in a farming sim. In fact, this was the first farming sim I have ever had a relationship and got married in. Now, small disclaimer, if you are going through loss at the moment in your family, I'd say give this a miss for now. But I will say the game handles these topics with such grace and care. The best part about Wylde Flowers, though, is they keep on adding free content to the game. Since it came out last September, there have been so many updates, adding things like new animals, magical animal breeding, and also more cutscenes as well. So even though the main story ends after the first in-game year, there's plenty to do even when it's ended. I'm about 60 hours in and I still haven't done all of the content yet, so you're definitely going to get a good amount of gameplay for your money. Then we have Harvestella. So fun fact, this is actually the reason why I don't do first impressions on this channel anymore. After my first 5 hours of Harvestella, I had written it off. I literally said, I don't think this is worth the money. I don't think it's that fun. I'm not a big fan. And then I played the game for 50 hours and decided it was one of my favorite games of 2023. All I will say though is this probably has one of the slowest starts to a farming sim that I have ever played. But it is well worth it once you get into it. To me, this is the perfect blend of farming sim mechanics and RPG mechanics. But the wild part is, both of them kind of enhance each other to be this perfect gaming experience. The best way to describe it is a farming sim with an incredible story, or an RPG, but where you actually own a home. The story sees you wake up in a strange town during what they call quietus, or the season of death. This is where strange dust falls from the sky and people can't walk outside without risking their life, and every crop withers. And the issue is, the season of death seems to grow longer with each passing year. So of course, it becomes your job to try and investigate why. And in all honesty, this story is so gripping and sees you travel the world to meet new friends. Each in-game day, you wake up in your home, tend to your farm, and then travel around the world to do either main story quests or a plethora of really well-written side quests. The farm kind of serves two purposes. It gives you an income that you can then use to upgrade your weapons, but it also gives you food that you can cook for stamina or for healing when doing big boss battles. The combat itself is kind of your typical RPG style, with jobs that you can level up to unlock new skills. But as I said earlier, the nice thing about these two being mixed together is it gives you farming with a purpose, alongside an RPG where you get to actually return to a house and a home each and every day, just making it feel more realistic. Then we have Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life. Now, I spent a long time when I was scripting this video trying to decide which Story of Seasons game I was gonna include for this list. And I was tempted to go with the second Doraemon Story of Seasons, because that one to me had the most full experience. But after I played Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, I had to include it in the list. I've been having so much fun. Despite the fact that this is a remake of a game that came out in 2003, it felt so fresh and different to every farming sim I've played before. And I think this is because this has a far larger focus on the people you meet and less so on the farming side of things. And the reason it focuses so much more on the people than the farming is because time actually passes in the game. Every single character you meet will age over time. Basically, it gets rid of one of my biggest problems with the farming sim genre. After a while, every single year feels exactly the same. The characters just go through the same dialogue, and every single festival is the same as the previous year, kind of making them just really boring and almost pointless once you get 3 or 4 years into it. But in this, the game is split into different chapters, and between chapters, several years pass, where you get to see the characters morph and change as they age. This forced me to play this completely differently from every other farming sim I've played, as the whole game is focused around you finding the love of your life, settling down, and having a family, with your actions actually affecting what job your kid goes into. And even though the farming mechanics were a lot of fun and very typical for the Story of Seasons franchise, for once, it isn't the part I focused on, and that's why I love this the most. Then we have Dragon Quest Builders 2. I told you this list is going to be filled with loads of different types of farming sims, and this is kind of similar to Minecraft, but with less pixels, and it's just cuter. This is a builder RPG with exploration, crafting, and of course, farming. There's enemies, there's loot and puzzle shrines to do as well. It's really got a bit of everything. And although the story's fun, it's really when you get to the post-game that things get exciting, as this is where you can be completely creative with what you build, and you get to set up this little town with every single character you meet along the way. And farming sim-wise, it's pretty expansive. There's a ton of stuff for you to do, and you can even make it automated later on. Then we have a personal favorite, which is Ooblets. This is an adorable mesh between farming sim and monster collecting, as the monsters themselves are actually plants that you can grow yourself. And don't worry, although you do battle with them, no one gets hurt because it's a good old-fashioned dance battle. The game gives you a house that you can live in, decorate, and upgrade. There's also an entire story that's just as quirky and as charming as the game looks. And you can grow a ton of other stuff other than Ooblets in your farm to get money. And later on, you'll also be given a shop where you can sell your farming produce in it as well. In this story, you travel around the world trying to fix the internet, with each area containing new people, new quests, and new Ooblets as well. There's even what they call gleamy Ooblets, which are kind of the Pokemon equivalent to shiny Pokemon, which I am absolutely obsessed with because they sparkle and have rainbows that follow them behind. So in my humble opinion, they're actually better than shiny Pokemon. Next, we have Everdream Valley, and this is an unbelievably refreshing take on a farming sim, honestly. In this, you kind of sacrifice the ability to decorate or customize your house with an absolutely massive expanse of land to go and explore instead. And there's a few things that really set this apart from a typical farming sim. First of all, you get to pick a dog, and there are so many different breeds to choose from, and they are absolutely adorable. But I think the biggest difference is this has a far larger focus on quests and animals than the actual farming itself, as your grandparents will more or less help you out around the farm when you need it, meaning that you don't have to tend to it every second of every day. There's also a ton of other stuff to do other than farming, so it doesn't really feel like the farming side of things actually control the whole game. The other way that this sets this apart is that there's magic. Some evenings when you go to sleep, you'll wake up to find that you're controlling one of the animals that live on your farm. And each type of animal has their very own minigame. So the more animals you keep on your farm, the more choices of minigame you might have to explore. And thankfully, there are a ton of different animals to go out and collect. But the way that makes this truly refreshing is all the extra stuff you can do. Like for example, if you want to get sheep on your farm, you can either go and buy them from the local store, or you can use your dog to go and find some hanging around the land, and then with the help of your dog acting as a sheepdog, you can guide the herd into your farm and put them in a little pen you made for them. There's also a ton of other fun things to do as well. You can play fetch with your dog. There's also mini games to do things like shearing your sheep and milking the cows. And the best part is, if you get bored with them, they're optional, so you can even skip it entirely if you don't feel like doing it. And the UI for the game is just incredible, meaning that every quest you have is signposted perfectly, allowing you to always know what you need to do in order to complete a quest. I personally adore this, because if you ever feel directionless in a farming sim, this is the perfect fix. You always have an abundance of quests for you to go and do, but none of them are time related or time sensitive, meaning that if you don't feel like doing any of the quests, that's also fine as well. As I said, it's just a completely refreshing and new take on the genre, and it runs really nicely on the Nintendo Switch. I was a little bit worried, as there's no loading scenes, that this was going to be a choppy disaster, but not only does it look pretty good, I don't think I saw any frame drops when I was playing it. And I found myself forever amazed at the little touches the game has. Like, for example, I found some deer eating the berries off one of my fruit bushes. So the game told me if I don't want that to happen anymore, you can set up a feeding station for the deer and it will stop them eating your bushes. I feel like that's such a cool thing to include, and I love coming across these little moments in Everdream Valley. Let me know if I missed out your favourite farming sim in the comments down below. And if you want to see a list of Switch games I actually regret buying, click this link here.